So for some reason, the YouTube really wants you, Lori. it it doesn't want the placeholder. So I'm gonna keep talking until it goes to me.
We can't hear you, Scott.
All right.
There
So
we
now
go.
you can hear me. Yeah. You gotta love when things work out. So welcome to the Photographer Show, where we talk to you, the everyday photographers in the photo focus community, about your love of photography and dig into some of the fun, nerdy stuff we all love about the art and craft of photography. My name is Scott Wyden-Kivowitz, and I'm joined today by my co-host, again, as always, Lori Novak. And for everyone who is watching live in the webinar or on YouTube, you can share in the chat where you're watching from. And as a special bonus question, we are curious if you have ever photographed a politician or a political event. You can answer yes, you can give a specific, reply if you want, but we're curious, so please share, because that's what we're talking about today. Today, we are talking with Rick Friedman. You probably know who he is. He has been teaching in the photo industry for a while and about a variety of topics, including lighting, which is one of his specialties. So welcome to the Photographer Show, Rick. Can you share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. And thank you both for having me. It's great to be here. So I have been a magazine photographer for a really long time. Like I've been doing this so long that I actually covered the Carter campaign, kind of at the very beginning of my career. And by the time Reagan ran against Bush, I was already working for Newsweek. I'm not quite sure how, but I was. And that was sort of it. And I, from the very beginning of covering politics, I just found it absolutely fascinating. I really enjoy the part of early in a presidential campaign when the candidates are out there and you don't have the buses and you don't have Secret Service and you actually get to spend some time with some of these people. So to me, that's the really fun part. And, I love doing it. Each campaign is different. I find as time goes on, you seem to have less and less access.
Right.
I mean, there were times, when a candidate would show up in New Hampshire, early in a campaign, they were fair game. They'd get in their car to go somewhere and you just follow in behind them, and whatever they did, you did. And you had great access, and you really got to meet the people. And to this day, I still love doing it. It's great fun. It's much better than having an actual job.
and and you are, besides from just being an incredible photographer, an incredible educator, you are also an ambassador for a couple brands. Can you share who you work with on a regular basis?
Yeah, I'm a Tamron Lens ambassador. So everything of mine that's been shot in the last several years is all shot with Tamron lenses. and they're terrific. And I use and abuse them. And amazingly, they haven't broken one yet, because I've broken a lot of lenses over my career. But no, I'm very, very happy with them. When I use them, obviously in the political work, my two main lenses are the 24 to 72 G lens and the Tamron 100 to 400. But I've got a bunch of other glass. And then I'm also a Savage ambassador. So most people think of Savage as a company that makes backdrops. They make terrific lighting equipment. As a matter of fact, I'm sitting under a Savage Pro Panel light right now, which is a terrific full spectrum LED light that runs off a video type battery. And you can get any color you want, literally out of the rainbow. And you control the whole thing with your iPhone. So I do a lot of work with them also. And then the other company for speed lights, I work with Nissan flashes.
Nice. Yeah, I'm actually using Savage edge lights right now. Two of them over my desk.
The whole thing's like an ad for Savage.
Yep. So there's a couple things I want to point out to everybody watching live, anybody watching the replay. A couple things. One, if you're watching live, there is a Q&A section. There is a live chat on YouTube and in the Zoom webinar. Please ask questions for Rick. We will get to your questions. We pretty much try to get to every possible question we can from the viewers. And two, this is not a political discussion. We will not be going off on what we believe in. This is, and there will be cats, as you can see. But this is a discussion about Rick's work and his fantastic stories he's going to have to share about the political photographs that he's made over the years. So with that, let's dive into the first question, which is one we ask every guest first and foremost. What was your first camera?
My very first camera was an Argus C3. Which
Rick, you're
enough to know what that is. And then I got a Minolta. My first SLR was a Minolta SRT 101, which is still somewhere in this office. And then shortly after that, I switched to Canons. And I shot Canon cameras up until maybe 10, 12 years ago when I switched to Nikons.
Rick, can you just check your audio? I think you dropped in volume a little bit for some reason.
Okay, is that any better?
No, it sounds like maybe your mic switched for some reason.
Hold on. All right. Mic is on. Hello? Have we lost it completely?
No, it's there. It's just very quiet.
That's weird. Let me see what we can do here.
Lori, is it quiet for you too?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so it's not just me.
That I'm actually quiet.
Honest, we didn't do that on purpose.
Let me see. Is it any better?
No, it almost sounds like it's not even coming out of that mic.
No. All right, let's try something totally different then. Nope, we lost it.
No, that's
you're
better.
louder though.
Yeah.
You're definitely louder now. Say something again.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well then we'll go that route. Okay, well, glad I spent the time rigging that mic. Obviously, audio is not my specialty. Okay, sorry about that.
So, just in case everybody didn't hear your first camera, can you repeat what you said?
Sure. The first camera was an Argus C3.
Argus C3.
And then from there, I got a Minolta SRT 101. Then went to Canons, then went to Nikons.
And you're still using Nikon to this day?
I'm using them. Yep, I beat them to death. I can tell you, they do bounce. When you're doing this kind of political photography, I mean, some of the time you're really running around. You're jumping in and out of cars. Your cameras are smashing together. And you're not really thinking about the equipment, like, should I carefully put this in the case? That's, you're just running. It's running gun, and, the stuff gets beat up, and I find, that the Nikon bodies take it and the Tamron lenses take it.
Right. That's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a Nikon user myself, and I've also seen them bounce, sadly, but they do bounce, so that's good.
They do,
Um,
yes.
so on, yeah, so on top of being a photographer, you're, as I mentioned, you're also an educator. As an educator, what ways do you actually use to learn more about photography?
When I teach at festivals and like the big shows, if I have time, one of the things I love doing is going and seeing what other photographers are doing. The other thing I do a lot is I have a number of friends who do different types of photography, and we'll get together or get online and pick each other's brains and tear each other's photographs apart. And I find that's very helpful. Just the exchange of information.
Right.
And I find that it jars you sometimes out of getting complacent. So I do that a fair amount.
Yeah,
I have a saying, the day you think you know everything in this business is that, and I'll be polite, is the day you have problems.
right. Yeah.
There's always somebody who's got a different approach on the same gear, something you've been doing, with the lighting gear, everybody seems to have a different approach. And I love seeing what great lighting people do. And the other thing that I do, I've been lucky enough, I've worked on over 20 movies as a still photographer, and working on film productions, watching what their lighting people do. I'm very good at stealing their ideas and translating them to still photography. So those are some of the ways that I, hope to improve my work.
Yeah, trying to replicate movie lighting is definitely a fun way to enhance your lighting skills for sure. I'm a big fan of trying to do that as well. Many times not successful, but trying is all you can do.
When you're on set, they have 20 lighting guys and 3 trailer trucks full of stuff, and you and I have what you and your assistant can carry.
Yeah. We don't have the multi-billion-dollar budgets.
No,
although it would be nice.
Going down too.
Yeah. So moving into some political photography questions.
Sure.
What is your mental state when you're actually photographing a political event? Like, what's going through your head to keep focused when there's actually so much going on between the person speaking, whoever the politician is speaking, the crowd either booing or cheering or whatever,
or in some cases yelling at the media.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
And also, potentially security or Secret Service also, at your hip, stuff like that. Like, what's your mental state when you're actually in that zone?
Your mental state, I think, is very similar as in any other photo shoot. Is where am I going to get the best picture? How am I going to get it? How am I going to, utilize what I've got for light? Obviously, we're going to big political events. We're not lighting them. Although, interesting enough, you go back far enough when we shot slide film, I'd take dynamites to events and light them. Obviously, you're not going to be able to do that today. And also back then, today we get to see our pictures before the editors. When we shot slide film, if I was working for Time or Newsweek, you would take all that film at the end of the day, throw it in an envelope, write a caption like Clinton in Iowa. That would be your whole caption for the day, and call a courier and then go have dinner, which was nice because you didn't have to edit it. But it was a very different approach. But the approach really is, how am I going to make the picture? Can I anticipate what is going to happen? How am I going to get there? Are they going to allow me to get there? Early in campaigns, you have a lot more leeway. Once Secret Service steps in, then it's obviously control. Their concern is taking care of the protectee. Right. There are certain campaigns that would just say, no, you can't go there to take that because the campaign is trying to direct what your photograph is. So obviously I don't want, a deputy junior assistant press person to come up to me. And I've actually had this happen. They come up and go, your photograph is over here. And I'm thinking, no, you're a third my age. You probably don't know where my photograph is. But so, you're trying to get it within the confines.
Right.
If you're,
covering the president. And I think we're going to see one of those pictures shortly.
Yep.
If you're covering Trump at a rally, if you're with the traveling press pool, then you get off the plane and you're in front. If you're not in the traveling press pool, which I am not, you are kind of restricted to a riser and the immediate area around that riser. Right. So you're trying to figure out where you want to be. If I stand in the middle of the riser behind the TV guy who, the advantage of having done this for a long time is I know a lot of people. So I can kind of get into some places.
I was going to ask that actually, if it mattered who, like, hearing wise or press or whoever, when you do it and people who can kind of help you, like you're standing there with how many other photographers and press people, like you don't get to necessarily pick where you're going to stand.
No,
like, dude, you're in my spot. You can't just do that. So if it helps to know people that can steer you a little bit.
It's a lot easier if you know people. Certain campaigns, if you start them early, you get to know people in the campaigns that may help you later when it's really crowded. I mean, to me, my idea of real fun is to go to an event real early in a campaign when nobody else wants to go. I go to the event, I have to get in my own way. I just love it. But if you get, the extreme other end is our current president, you're on a riser. I joke about it. You feel like you're making general views with a 300 millimeter lens. How can you try to make something different? Can you find that angle? Things as simple as if it's a crowded press riser, where do you stand? If you go in the middle, the center dead on, and it gets really crowded, you probably can't move because you don't want to move on that riser and shake it because that's going to mess up other people, the TV crews. So there are times I'll start on the outer edge and because then I can go down the stairs and maybe I can shoot through the crowd and get the signs through the crowd. So you're trying to make something different.
Yeah.
Doesn't always work, but you're trying.
So I'm curious that if with your experience of photographing various political events, if at some point you can now recognize when in a politician's speech, the big moment's about to come where he's going to do some big, gesture or there's going to be a big crowd applause or something. Are you at the point where you can anticipate that's coming so you can prepare for that photo?
There are, if you cover the same person a lot, generally there's a stump speech. So you kind of know when things are happening after a while. And, if you really cover somebody a lot, you feel like you can deliver the stump speech yourself because you've heard it so many times. Everything's the same. Add this city. So yeah, there are times that you try to, anticipate. I mean, I'll be working on a long lens, but I'm always going to have like a 24-70 around, not around my neck, on my shoulder. My neck doesn't do it anymore. In case the crowd, when the president says, look at those horrible press people all back there on the rise of the line, and the crowd sometimes will literally turn around and start pointing at you and yelling at you. It's a terrific wide angle shot. I had a double spread Time magazine from them yelling at the press.
That actually leads me into what my next question was. Can you go over your sort of default, and I'm sure there's some situations where you have to switch it up, but your default setting, setup from camera to lens that you use, whether on a monopod, on a tripod, handheld, another one on your hip, whatever it is, sort of your go-to for that?
Yeah. Well, it really, if we're early in a campaign, and I can pretty much drive towards where I want, and I don't really have to deal with security. Generally, I'm gonna have the 20. If I'm only taking two lenses, it'll be 24-70 and the 100-400, both the Tamron lenses. There are sometimes that I will carry a small camera bag that'll have a 17-35 in it. And I tend to take one speed light. So I'll have one Nissan Speedlight. I will have a small off-camera transmitter with me, although early in the campaign, sometimes you can set drop speed lights somewhere and shoot. When you get to the point where you're covering a sitting president, you obviously have to show up hours early. You have to apply for credentials and they will approve you. Then you show up and you'll get a time. It'll be the preset time, which means if you have a ton of gear, like the TV crews all have to preset, and then they have to leave while Secret Service does a sweep, and then they open it back up to media. If you carry the stuff that I carry for a situation like that, I don't do the preset. So I'm going to go with a rolling think tank case, and it's going to have 3 camera bodies. I'll always have one out. And it'll be, again, 1735, 2470. The long guns, 100 to 400. The strobes, I will have a ladder. I'll have a monopod. I usually don't use tripods, but I usually don't use monopods. I left the lens out. I mean, this is the 100, 400. This lens is small enough and light enough to hand hold.
And so I love that lens. Well, I have that lens too.
Yeah, and it's because too much gear. If you have too much gear, it can interfere with your photographs.
Yep.
And then if I'm on a tight deadline, which I am quite often, then I'm obviously going to have my laptop. And if the speech goes on and on and on, you stop shooting for a couple of minutes. Hopefully, you don't miss anything, and then send a couple of pictures. Ideally, I would rather have my camera to my eye the whole time.
Right.
But sometimes they're on a tight deadline.
So
that's pretty much the kit.
Yeah.
Oh, the other thing I've got, which I will use quite often, I tend to wear when I'm shooting. I'm looking to see if there's one of there isn't. A Hoodman loop.
Ah, right.
I tend to wear a Hoodman loop because if I've got bright light, I want to, I'll just turn the screen on, do this with the loop, and then just let it hang around my neck. And I know I'm getting what I want.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a really good tool to have and any photographer's
bag. That's $90 you can spend.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of money.
Right.
Oh wait, hold on. For anybody who doesn't know what it is, I knew I had one lying here. This is what it is. You put this on the screen and you can see what you're doing. I mean, I've been shooting a lot of scenics lately because it's fall foliage in New England. Essential tool.
Yeah. So I know that as we just talked about, when you're in an event or whatever it is, and your mental state is so focused on the job at hand, but do you ever find yourself actually paying attention to the words being said, like the actual words being said by the politician? And if so, if you do listen, do you ever find yourself being swayed one way or another based on what's being said?
The answer to the end of what you asked is no. As far as do you listen? Sometimes, but I mean, I never stop what I'm doing to listen. And if I'm concentrating on the image and I'm waiting for my moment, I can hear the words, but I'm not really thinking about it. I'm thinking about light, movement,
right.
What is he or she going to do? Am I in the right place? More so than listening to the speech.
Right. Cool. Yeah, I was hoping that would be the answer.
Yes, I have the ability to block it out.
That's good. So I want to take a short break to share that, for the past few episodes, we've shared the 21st birthday of Photo Focus and the big contest going on. But for this episode, we want to share that Photo Focus is participating in the 5-day deal, and that is coming up this month. And you've got a chance to win some incredible prizes, including a new laptop, which is pretty cool. And this year's 5-day deal bundle is worth over $2,700. So to find out more information, just go to photofocus.com. And again, Lori, actually, is there any questions that we want to pop in now before we move on to the rest of our questions?
Not yet. I have one, but I think it might be better for later. And I shared the 5-day deal link in our chat, so people can find it there too.
Great. Okay, so Rick.
Yes.
Before we move into looking at, we have 5 photos of yours to look at today. Each one is a different president. Actually, we've got 2 of one president, but so I'm really excited because it shows the diversity of the people that you photographed, and not only the people you photographed, but the diversity of the type of politician they are. So I think that's incredible that we're going to see such a diverse series of photos. But before we dive into that, how has photography changed the way that you see the world?
The way that I see the world?
Mm-hmm.
I see the world one frame at a time. I'm not really sure how photography, that's not true. I mean, I look at things as news events. You know, I tend to look at certain things in literally single frames. You know, if I'm watching, like, you know, something on the network news and they're showing you the scene, in my head I'm going, that's the moment. That's it. I think it makes you very aware of your surroundings. You know, I mean, I'm constantly, maybe it's just my makeup, but I'm constantly looking. You know, I mean, it somewhat drives me insane when I see all these people walking down the streets or through the woods or whatever on their looking at their phones. Hello, people, look up, look at the world around you. Watch what's going to happen in front of you. You know, I think some of that comes from, you know, my training as a photojournalist. And, you know, I started out, I mean, I was lucky enough to meet somebody when I was quite young. I got a part-time job in a camera store in Harvard Square. Is literally where I started, where I was eminently not qualified to sell Triax. And through that, became friends with a bunch of photographers, and a couple of them kind of, you know, would let me get them coffee and hang out, and taught me the business of how to be a photojournalist, you know, from things about constantly being aware, you know, to make sure you have your cameras. You know, I say there's only one rule in photography: you have to have a camera. Right. Everything else is subjective. I know, to things like that don't make common sense. If you're a photojournalist, fill your gas tank before you go home, because you never know when an airplane's going to fall out of the sky and you have to cover the story. So
sad but true.
Sad but true. Yes. May I never cover another one.
Yikes.
Yep. All right. So let's share my screen right now, and we're going to dive into some of your photos. Just let me know when you, yeah. Pun not intended on that one. So just let me know when you can you see my screen right now?
I can see it. Yeah. Okay.
So normally we would have a series of questions to ask you about each photo, regarding, you know, how you photographed it, some of the editing process. But for these, I just want to ask the story behind each one, because they're all so interesting. So for this one, I'll just let you roll.
Okay. So this obviously goes back just a few years. And this was New Hampshire primary night. And I was assigned by Newsweek to photograph George H.W. Bush, who had run against Reagan in the primary. And my guy lost. You know, I went and I photographed him in the hotel room, you know, watching TV, and then went downstairs with him while he gave his concession speech. And, you know, we were in Manchester, New Hampshire, and not being remotely daunted by the fact that my guy lost, I immediately jumped in my beat up old Volkswagen and drove from Manchester to Concord, drove up to the Holiday Inn, dumped my car literally in a snowbank, and ran into the room and made it to the third row. You would never be able to do that today. There is no way you could show up at a primary night event without having applied for credentials and going through security and having been in place for an hour or two. But in this case, I ran in, I made it to the third row. There were 2 rows of photographers in front of me, most of whom I knew. And I said, well, you know, I went right in the middle, and I said, if you lean your head this way and you lean your head that way, maybe I can get a lens through the middle. And I shot this picture with a Canon 8E1 and a 51.4. The most basic equipment you could have.
That's awesome.
And I, you know, then took it and I, you know, shipped the film off. And at that point and for many years, I was represented by Black Star, by Howard Chapnick. And so if you would do it, you'd ship the film and Howard would get it right to Newsweek. And he calls me up Thursday late afternoon. He said, "How does it feel to have your first Newsweek cover?" I said, "I have no idea." And it took him like a half hour to convince me that I actually had made a cover. And I'd never been to Newsweek. I'd never met anybody there. I mean, I'd spoken to them on the phone. And I had made an appointment to go to Newsweek the Tuesday after the New Hampshire primary. So I walked into the Newsweek building, and when you walked in, they on either side of the door, there was a 4-foot by 8-foot Duratrans of the cover. So it was the most bizarre thing to walk into the Newsweek building and stand in the middle of these 2 enormous posters of my work. And then I went up to the photo department, and they took me around and introduced me as, "This is Rick Friedman. He made our cover." And I thought, well, this is cool. This making Newsweek covers is really easy. Yeah. So 7 years later, I had the next one.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, it is pretty cool that like a last minute, let me figure out how to squeeze my camera through these 2 heads wound up being on a tiny publication called Newsweek.
Yeah, well, and it was shot horizontal. It was not shot as a vertical.
So there's a lot of mission there.
And if you think, what our film was like back then, there was no noise reduction.
Right.
Roll 320.
Yeah. I love how grainy it looks. I think it looks like film. I mean,
well,
it is film.
It's of the time, like right?
Yeah.
And it's also of the time. You can tell it was then. It's how all photos looked then.
Yeah. Oh man,
right,
grain the size of golf balls.
Let's move into the next one.
We thought when you could, when you got film that went to 320 ISO, that was like the most amazing thing ever.
Yeah.
Anyway, this one you just put up. This is Curious George. This was actually shot at his convention, and he's just standing there waiting to talk. But I kind of thought he looked like Curious George. He's a very nice guy. I mean, I covered him a fair amount. He's a very, very nice gentleman.
His facial expression is just incredible there. It's so funny.
Kind of like, do I have to do this tomorrow too?
Right.
Yeah. And but what as a photographer, less politics in this one, but as a photographer, how buttery smooth that background is, how much he pops off that background. And it's such an iconic background. You know exactly what it is.
Right.
It's just it is a beautiful photo with such a nice depth of field. And of course,
sorry.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that was shot to the center camera riser. So if you're covering one of the conventions, a certain number, the center camera riser is enormous. And you go up there and, you bring your tripod or, you bring a head and you just bolt the head right to the table. Literally bring a drill a hole through the table, bolt your tripod head in, and then just spend the whole 4 days up there with a long lens.
Yeah.
So,
it's funny. I look at this and in my head, I'm thinking like, okay, so what is going through his head right now?
Right.
To me, the story that I think that he's thinking is his worst nightmare has happened. He went on stage and he's not wearing pants. It's like that going to school without pants.
Right.
Nightmare.
That's why the podium was so big. Now I get it.
Yeah. I love this image. Okay, so this one, I mentioned to you earlier, Rick, that you had a bunch of Obama photos. We're going to see one more Obama photo after this, but the one that I really wanted to share, Lori already shared in the Photo Focus post about this, so I didn't want to reshare.
Oh, the bartender picture?
Yeah.
That one has a good backstory too.
So I wanted to share this one because in my view, Obama was very family-oriented and a very relatable president. And so I feel like this sort of sums up my view on Obama perfectly, this one photo. So I'm very excited to hear the backstory on this because of that.
So this was during one of the presidential vacations on Martha's Vineyard, which was extremely rough duty. You have to go to Martha's Vineyard for 2 weeks, eat lobster rolls. It was just terrible. Anyway, if the way that the days would go on this, so some people were in the pool every day, some people were in every other day. So this was on one of my pool days, and just really quickly, the day would start. So you would get like the pool call might be 7 a.m. in the morning. which meant that you had to be on the press bus at 7 a.m. So they had a big bus that was kind of like the mobile press room. And we get on this bus at 7 a.m. with our coffee and completely asleep. And you might sit there for an hour, two, and then all of a sudden they'd say, we're moving. So you get on, the bus starts driving up island. You drive up island and they stop in one of the little towns and everybody gets off the bus and takes their gear off. And there are vans waiting for us because they can't have the bus in the motorcade. There are a couple of reasons. One is that obviously it blocks the view of the security vehicles behind it and it really can't keep up. So we then get in vans. And then there's this whole protocol as to who sits where in a press van, depending on who you work for, kind of pecking orders. So, the wire guys get to sit next to the door and the magazine guys are one row back. But anyway, so we go and we sit around for a good while and then we get in the van. So we drive further up island and we get out in a field and now they search us and go through our gear and search the vans, and you have a credential for the trip, but then they give you a different color credential for that day. So each time you do it, let me just pull it. Anyway, hang on one sec. I hadn't planned on doing this, but so like you would get a pass like this. Okay. And that would change colors every day. So this is from the last time I covered the president. So this is the event pass. That's the Secret Service pass. And anyway, so they give you that and then you sit around a while longer and they go, okay, let's go. You pile into the vans. And in this case, he was staying, obviously on the ocean. We're sitting at a field. The front half of the motorcade comes out of the road that he's on. The back half of the motorcade that we're in just folds in and we then go with him. And we go with him to a point and then we're told, we're not getting out of the vans there. We're going somewhere else. And then they bring us to this field and they point to this path and they say, the president's going to ride a bicycle through there. And it's like, okay. So there, I don't know, maybe half a dozen stills and one or two TV cameras. And we're just standing there and anybody who rides out of that path before the president comes, they're our test subject. So these families come out of the woods. And there's this horde of journalists with enormous lenses going click, 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 click. It's like, okay, now I know that's good, And then the president comes out with his daughter, and you do the same thing. And this is my entire day's capturing of pictures for the whole day. Sure hope it's in focus. That's it. Wow. And he's gone. That's it.
Yeah.
And there's no redo. There's no reset.
And you have to make sure that you have to hope that the family that came out that path before you didn't fill up your buffer or your memory card.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. In other words, but I mean things like you need to think about like shutters. I mean what your simple things: shutter speed. Exposure. Do I have really fast cards?
Well, at least the family. But at least the family came out before and gave you the opportunity to test that.
Let's screw that up, yeah.
Right.
So, and then like the rest of our day. So we get this picture and then they put us back in the vans and we go sit around while he goes and finishes his bike ride. And then after that, we get in the motorcade and the motorcade goes back to the house. They bring us back to the field. As we're getting out, they say the president's going to play golf. Back into the vans we go, back into the motorcade. Now, with Bush 41 and Bill Clinton, I mean, they were more than happy to have the press tag along on the golf course. I mean, Bush 41, I mean, with him, you were supposed to shoot the first hole, the 9th hole, and the 18th hole. And sometimes he'd hit the ball and then hit a couple of mulligans, and they go, come on. And the staff would go, oh, no, sir, the press is only going to stay here. He goes, no, they're coming. And like the president says, go, you go. Right. Obama, I mean, I photographed Obama playing golf a number of times towards about halfway through his second term, right through the end. He really didn't want to be photographed playing golf anymore. So there were, if it wasn't your pool day, you might get something. But anyway, he went and played golf. So while he played golf, they literally drove us to a parking lot under the power lines. here we are in beautiful Martha's Vineyard, sitting with our big yellow bus under the power lines for hours. And then he went out to dinner with Michelle, and we never got a picture there either. So the day started at 7, ended at about 11:30 at night, and those were the only pictures.
And that's the nature of doing what you do, though. I mean,
yeah,
it might not be a typical, but it happens probably more often than people really think about.
Yeah.
People probably think, you're out at events and stuff all the time, but they don't always think about some of these kind of scenes and how
there's a lot of times
how you get there.
A lot of times sitting in vans.
Yeah.
When I covered Clinton, when the motorcade stopped, the photographers would leap out of the van and run up to him. With Obama, the motorcade would stop, and the agent, you always had a press agent whose job it was to sort of be the liaison between you and the other agents. And they just get out and lean against the door like you're not getting out. It's like, nice. Oh, this is glamorous. Anyway, but I love it. I still love it, and it's great fun.
Awesome. All right, let's move into the next one. So again, another Obama, but somebody else everybody might recognize.
Some other guy, yeah.
Some other guy, VP Biden and presidential nominee Biden.
Yeah, and this was, they were on their way to DC for Obama's first inauguration. And I love when they say we're doing a whistle-stop tour. This really was a whistle-stop tour. I mean, they were back of an old caboose, right, waving at the crowds. So, and they never stopped. I mean, they just slowed the train down. And we're, I was with a friend of mine, Dennis Brock, and the two of us are on these enormous ladders, getting over the crowd. And again, it's kind of like the bicycle. That's it.
Right. It's a great shot, though. I like that one.
I appreciate that very much. Yeah, I kind of like it. And, it seems to be kind of coming back today.
Yeah.
Do you put these on stock sites besides... Are you only work for like certain publications, or do you use some of these for your own stock selling?
Oh, I'm very happy to sell them. Would you like to buy one?
Well, no, I probably can't afford it, but I'm just curious how you,
Yes, absolutely. So, I describe it. I've always been an agency photographer.
Okay.
So, but the world of agencies, we could do a whole show on this.
Yeah, right.
It's changed dramatically. Right. But I was with Black Star for a tremendous amount of my career. And then one of the picture editors from Time went to Corbis and asked me if I would jump ship, and he kept nudging me and getting me assignments. So things had changed at Black Star, but it was a great, great place to be. So I went to Corbis, and I have a fairly large archive. And then we all know, what happened to Corbis as they got acquired by Getty. So I have about 19,000 images at Getty.
Wow. Okay.
Cool. But, I'm not getting assignments through Getty. I also do a lot of work through an organization called Polaris. And that's, much more like the old style picture agencies. So, yes. Nice. I wait for that royalty check every month.
Right. So let's dive into the last. Let's dive into the last photo. So this is the last one, and this is also somebody everybody should recognize these days, President Trump. And we were deciding earlier of which Trump photo to share, and I mentioned that this one and the other that we were deciding between really show how powerful a president is by the Air Force One behind him, by his body language right now with his arms out, and the crowd all wearing his colors and stuff. So that's what stands out for me in this is the sense of power that it comes from it. So if you want to share the backstory of this, that'd be great.
So that was at an event, I don't know, 3 weeks, a month ago. And this is shot from the riser, obviously shot with a wide angle lens. And just, I shot this picture this way, but I also took out my really long lens and shot it tight. But I thought this gave me the feeling of, what the scene is. And, just, it's the end of the day. We're starting to get a little golden hour, going to blue hour. You know, on the bottom of it, you've got the funky light that they put up. And on this one, I mean, they had him lit. I'll bet there must have been 8 RE6Ks. I mean, just enormous, enormous lighting, which is, you know, how you get it. And after I shot this, I actually went down the stairs. So the stairs are, as we're looking at it, on the left. And I went down and stood and shot as close as I could get to the crowd, through the crowd, and did much tighter pictures with that light. So, you know, you're trying to get a scene set of the feeling of it, but then can you get a portrait?
Right.
And the light, you know, for a few minutes in this situation with the tight lens was unbelievable, because I can imagine, into the sky, and the sky was going, you know, that cobalt blue, and they had him lit. Cool. Yeah. So it was a good shoot. It really was. Yeah. And no, awesome. I didn't listen to what he said. I can't tell you anything he said. I think once he said, "Look at those horrible media people." That I always hear.
Right. All right. So let me switch back to this. Lori, before we move into the final question, was there any questions in YouTube or in Zoom?
No, not in the I have one that I've thought about earlier today, and I saw earlier today an article that had images of past presidents. I mean, all the way back to like Teddy Roosevelt and
I didn't
further,
cover
that that showed them in casual settings, kind of like Obama on the bike or playing basketball. You know, they included that one with him playing basketball. And it made me think about, like, how does it make you feel to know that your images are like going to be preserved like through history there, because you're recording history, you know? So how does that, like, I mean, I just got goosebumps saying that, you know, because it's a cool thing, you know, like,
you know, I really don't feel that way when you're shooting them.
Not when you're doing it, but I mean, I don't know. I mean,
I find, you know, and putting this, you know, this body of work together that I sent to you folks, I mean, it's sort of going back through some of this stuff. And I have to admit, I'll go back through some old, you know, archives and go, did I really take that? I mean, when I was putting this together, I came up with a picture of George H.W. Bush. That was when he first started to run against Reagan. And it sort of has this look of really old black and white. And he's a very young man in the picture. And it just sort of, you know, had this feeling. I mean, there's some of the other Reagan stuff, you know, I mean, one that we didn't use, but I know I'd sent you, you know, Reagan and Nancy at his birthday party, where he's kissing her and he's holding a birthday cake. And it was just, you know, just to be there and shooting it with a wide angle lens. It wasn't like we were pressing the back of the room. I mean, we were just right there with, you know, wide angle lenses. So it's looking back on it. It's, I know it's great to have been there. I look back on it and feel that it's a real honor to have had this chance to be there when history is happening.
Right. That's
you
cool.
know, and
very cool.
I think it's awesome. It really
Definitely.
is. You know?
Definitely.
And every so often I'm sure we all feel this way. Every so often you make a really good one that makes up for the large handful of the not so good ones. I mean, you know,
the good ones is what we always aim for.
Yeah, I mean, I do a ton of portraits, you know, and I look back on the portrait photography of some of the people I've had the honor of photographing, and you know, there's some stuff there. Like, I mean, I've photographed probably 30 Nobel laureates by now. I mean, I haven't done one since I think last Thursday. You know, and to look back at that body of work, just like, wow, I got to be here as history was happening.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
somebody commented. Yeah. Somebody commented, James Mahaney. I don't know if you know him or not, but he says, Rick retains his enthusiasm throughout the years. His lighting workshops are loads of fun. It's how I began my portrait work. Great talk today.
Awesome.
Thank you, James. I greatly appreciate that. Yeah. The subtitle of my lighting workshops is Lighting and Laughing.
Oh, cool. That's cool.
The idea is we have a lot of fun in the workshops.
I might butcher his last name. I apologize, but Michael Antin from Hardline Photography. He looks like he posted on the YouTube saying, thank you. And his question is, do you feel photography and photojournalism is a way of life more than anything else?
Absolutely. Yes, it's photography is who I am. You know, I literally, this is just, you know, my thing. I won't go more than, you know, I'll walk to the corner without a camera, but I probably won't go any further. Right. I always have a camera. Yes, for me, it's absolutely a way of life.
We might even be able to say that you live, breathe, and even decorate your walls with your photography.
Well, I'll take this back a little bit, say a little bit of the wall. So those are some of my covers. You know.
That's cool.
And I got to tell you, you know, even at this point, when I see an image of mine in print, I get the same excited feeling that I got when I had my very first picture in print. You know, I never forget the first picture I ever had in Newsweek was this one column, little black and white. So it was one column by maybe, I don't know, 6 inches, 8 inches. And it was printed in black and white, not because it was artsy to print it in black and white, because they printed most of the magazine in black and white. And that was the coolest thing. You know, first time I had my name in Newsweek, first time you know, when I first started out, the gentleman who was teaching me worked at United Press International. And, you know, I would go in and try to learn the business and eventually would do a lot of work for them. And he called me one day and said, "Kid, you seen the Afternoon Globe?" It's like, "No." "Well, go find one, kid." And so I went into Harvard Square, and there they used to hang the newspapers up outside the newsstands. And above the fold, you know, 4 out of 5 columns was this feature that I had shot the day before. I was completely hooked. Completely, you know. It's my mind.
That's the feeling that I get when I photograph a headshot for a client and then it's being used on their website or on their business card, or when I photograph a family and then I go back to their house and my photo's on their wall, you know. That gives me the good feels every time.
Right.
Yeah. You know, I have a saying, you know, what do photographers do to relax? We take pictures. We just don't have to care if they come out.
Right.
So as we wrap this up, my final question to you is if you can share a tip for photographers about either a technique or equipment or something, and I'm going to ask that you tailor your answer, your tip for political photography more than anything else.
Whoa.
I mean, you've already shared some good stuff, like don't always get dead center.
Best tip I have, you know, and it'll go back to, you know, when I first started, you know, when I first started, they had a saying, you know, F8 and be there, you know, set the camera at F8 and just make sure you're there and we'll figure out the rest of it later. Well, obviously now it's be there and know what you're doing, but be there, you know, go figure out what your passion is, whether it's political photography or portraiture or scenics, and just go with it. You know, it's just the best. And, you know, I mean, I always feel like, you know, there's one more frame. I always feel like I could have done that better. You know, the old, why didn't I? You know, I mean, and it doesn't matter what I'm shooting. I mean, portraits, I always, you know, when you're working with people, they have a limited amount of time. But when I get back, it's like, why didn't I get this guy to do this kind of thing?
Right.
You know, I always want to make it better. And it's just, you know, it's a passion. You know, I mean, you know, it's what I do for a living, but, you know, it's what I love doing. It's what I do to relax. You know, the other advice I can give people is if you want to make a lot of money in photography, don't be a photojournalist. A buddy of mine, Steve Liss, who worked for Time for many years, had a saying, you know how you make $1 million as a photojournalist? Start with 2. Pretty soon you'll have 1.
That's a good one.
And as soon as we hang up, I'm going out shooting this afternoon. Nice. I know it's 73 degrees in Boston today.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Anyway,
cool. So can you share the absolute best place for everybody to find more information about you, see your gallery of work and so on?
Sure. So the website is rickfriedman.com. And it's spelled Friedman because my ancestors couldn't spell when they got to Ellis Island. So we became Friedman. And on Facebook, just Rick Friedman, and on Instagram and Twitter, it's Rick Friedman PIX. And I post on social media every couple of days. I'll throw something up. And they range from, right now, I think there are a lot of leaves because it's autumn in New England, but there are some portraits. And the other thing, it's very nice. I love when people come to my workshops, which hopefully we will get to start them up again soon.
Yeah.
I do some small ones here in my studio. And then I do them pretty much all over the country. And I've been lucky enough. I've done several workshops in the UK, several, like 15. I've done them in the Middle East, all over the US, all over Canada. And if, people have questions, drop me an email. And what I tell people, if I don't get back quickly, it means I'm on assignment space or 2 out of 3. But write again, and either Keiko Hiromi, my shooting partner, or I will get back to you.
Cool.
Awesome.
So thank you. Thanks, Lori, for being a fantastic co-host again. And thank you to Rick. Thank you for joining us today. I think that this was a really fun conversation. You shared a lot of really good advice. You shared some amazing photos. And it's really cool to see what you've done over the years. I think it's
and I'm not done yet.
And you're not done yet. No, there's hey, you've got potentially a new president coming up very soon that maybe you'll get to photograph him, not as a VP. Have you ever photographed somebody while they were VP and then somebody as they were president? Random final question.
Yeah, Bush.
So you, so you did. Okay, cool.
Yeah, Bush 41.
So,
who was terrific.
So maybe you'll have we'll see what happens next month, but maybe you'll have a chance to do that, a second time.
Yeah, we'll see. Biden's terrific to work with. So
he seems like a very nice guy.
Yeah. But I want to thank you both very much for having me. This has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and I really appreciate it.
No, it's very interesting to see those sides of what we see pretty much every day. We see the photos and stuff every day, but it's nice to see from a photography perspective what goes on.
What goes into that 13-second photo shoot that took you 12 hours?
Right.
Yes. And with that,
all right.
I'm gonna
awesome.
throw the outro.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks.